Three women, wives, mothers, and entrepreneurs with mouths and minds so dirty they don't want the parents in the carpool line to know their real identities. This is Kinks Out. Our names may be made up, but the stories are real. We have a special guest author with us. Oh, Mars and Geeg here today. And the author we have with us, her debut novel For the Plot came out in March. It mostly takes place in Greece. There's time hops, stepbrothers references, pegging. Should we say more? We have a big welcome here to Katie Van Brunt. Katie, welcome to Kinks Out.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So before we dive into talking about For the Plot, we do a rapid fire. So I will jump into those. Normally Shug does them. I was not prepared for this.
I know, it's weird.
But I'm excited to see if I can do her justice by it. Is that the right phrase? Yeah.
Yes.
So our first one is coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee. As I'm holding a cup right now.
Yes, she's drinking coffee while we're doing this. Coffee. Yes.
But
How do you take your coffee?
Black. I take it black.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that weird? You made a really weird face.
Only because I can't drink black coffee. I tried to teach myself to like it. My husband drinks black coffee, and no matter, I've had the most basic of black coffee. I've had fancier black coffee out places, and I just cannot do it. There has to be some sort of cream sugar sweetener situation in mine.
I
hats
do
off to
not
you.
I do not like sweet drinks, like alcoholic drinks or wine or anything like that. I do not like it to be sweet. I don't know, it gives me a sugar headache or something like that. I do like sweets, but just not in my drinks.
Yeah.
And even with tea, so I also really do enjoy drinking tea, but maybe after dinner time. And I won't put anything in my tea either. Sometimes honey. So I've been living in Greece for the past 2.5 years, and they have amazing, amazing honey. And it kind of has medicinal, greatness in it. And so I would put that in my tea, and I got used to drinking it that way. And they also have this amazing mountain tea that you can only get in the mountains of Crete. And so I was drinking a lot of tea there, but I definitely have coffee in the morning. I have it black. I will say if I go out with friends to have coffee, I don't want to pay for black coffee. I'm like, I can make this at home. So I will sometimes get something in my coffee, but flavors don't really exist in Greece. They don't add, there's no caramel macchiato. It's just a macchiato. And so they're not really into flavors. When I was living in California, I would have honey lavender lattes, all of the very just kind of hippie kind of, hipster drinks out there. But yeah, I've just been drinking instant coffee because that's how most of the Greeks do it. So it's really good now.
But it's probably really, really good. I would imagine even just a regular latte of sorts, just the way that it's made in Greece is probably so good. I can drink a plain latte. It doesn't have to have flavor if it's made well.
Right.
Good coffee, good, milk or whatever type of situation. It doesn't always need that flavor. But man, I do love a honey lavender latte. All right, so the next one is...
I love that we took a
rapid.
deep dive.
I was going to say, we just took a deep dive, and I even still have things to say about that, but I'll stop.
I could talk about coffee for a very unhealthy amount of time. I really could. We could just do an episode on coffee if you want. You wrote a book, but let's talk about coffee.
Yeah, let's talk about your favorites. And Shug hates coffee, so
guys, this is a great segue into the peen latte in the book.
Exactly,
and the thing that has followed me into, I don't know. I have stickers that are the penis latte, and it just was this silly little joke that I had in the beginning, and then my cover artist made stickers out of it, and then readers send me reels of if there's ever a latte artist and they make a penis, and then
yes,
kind of thing.
I
I get
loved
those
that
videos
part.
all the time and pictures of it.
What
It's
a
anyways.
what a thing to be known for. I love that. I love that for you.
So our next extremely rapid fire question. Kindle or physical book? Which do you
Okay.
prefer?
So pre-kids, it was always physical book. Like I love the feel of the pages between my fingers, always a book. But then, especially when I had my third child, I was nursing him and I'm like, what do I do? He's nursing all the time. And so my mom
Mhm.
passed down her Kindle and I was reading so many books while I was nursing him in the middle of the night because my husband could still be sleeping, and we had a toddler and a preschooler and everything. Anyway, so I just kind of got used to being on a Kindle, and we move a lot. My husband's in the military, so we're moving every 2 years, and I just cannot keep packing up books, unpacking them, packing up books, unpacking them. And so I've bought a lot less physical books in the last few years, especially moving to Greece. Was like, I can't bring all of my book babies with me. And Amazon doesn't exist in Greece. So it's not like I could just Amazon Prime a book when I wanted it. So if I really wanted to read a book, I just would have to instantly buy it on my Kindle. So I've gotten used to it that way.
That's
I feel like
that's
I'm the
actually
same way.
that's how
Like
I started reading with my Kindles because of my kids. Like,
I
what can
was
I
too.
do one-handed? Like, same
Yep.
thing, nursing a
Nursing a
baby.
kid.
Mhm. I fought it for
Yep.
so long though. I was like, I
Me
don't like
too.
the Kindle. I need to move the page from one
Yes.
side to the other.
I still buy the books though. I need my trophies, even though
Yes. Yes, we
Has like whole shelves in her house of books, and it's like, oh, I read it on my Kindle. Oh, I read that one on my
that's the
Kindle.
dream.
But she has them all, and it's
I
very
mean,
aesthetically pleasing to look at.
I
That is the
live
dream.
in a like 100-plus-year-old house. Like we have the most gorgeous built-ins.
She
Like
does.
why would I not? Like I feel like that wouldn't be doing them justice of the gorgeousness of these wooden built-in bookshelves if I did not put books on them.
And
I
they're all like
100%
arranged by
agree.
the rainbow for the most part. It's
Oh,
very pretty
oh
to
my
look at. We'll send you
gosh.
a picture.
You have to send me a
Here's me. I'm like
picture
in my house. Like I live
immediately.
there. I'm like, I'll send you a picture of Gigi's bookcase because
That
it
is
is
my
It's fine.
favorite way to organize is Rainbow. All of my apps on my phone are organized by Rainbow
Rainbow.
too.
Oh,
Yeah.
I never thought of that. I
I
love
know what I'm
that.
doing later.
You
I'm
just got
gonna
to
be
sit
like,
down and commit to it. It's a little bit time consuming, but once it's done, it's done until an app
Yes.
changes their icon color, which is really annoying. And then you have to
And then
switch
you
it to
have
a
to move
different
it.
folder. Yeah.
I know what I'm
I
doing at
do have to
baseball practice
say,
later.
oh, yeah, there you go. I do have to say one time when I was decorating the bookshelf, because like I've done different ways. One time I took all the books and I flipped the spines. So I was in like this very like monotone, like,
It
I
was a
don't know.
phase.
It was a sad phase in my life. I like flipped them all. And my husband is like, what kind of freak turns the books like that? He's like, what is wrong with you? I'm like,
Like
It's
she's
like a
crazy.
choose
someone,
your own adventure. Like
I was like, you
just
never know what you're going to get. Like,
Oh, it is like a choose your own adventure. I hadn't thought of it that way.
yeah.
I have seen that though, where you flip them around and then you just like pick a book and then you have to read that book. And once you've read it, you flip it back, so the spine is showing.
Oh,
But I just don't think I could do that. I'm too
I'm
No,
much
I
of
such
a
don't
mood
either.
reader.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we all three just said the exact same thing at the same time. Mood reader. I
I
can't.
would like pull it out with the intention of being like, that's it. I'm going to commit to this book. And if I pulled it out and it wasn't what I wanted, I would put it back. I'd be like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll
try
try
again. Try
again.
again.
Do a
That's like
repick. No.
my daughter has a magic 8 ball, and the other day I was like, I 30 whatever year old, and I still use a magic 8 ball. It's fine. I like asked it a question and I shook it and I was like, oh, let me try that again. I like shook it again.
Did
So I
not
got the
appreciate
answer I
that
wanted.
answer.
Maybe the next one. Oh my god. Our rapid fire. Sorry. Anyway.
You
Okay,
should
next.
change it to slow burn
Slow
questionnaire or
burn.
something.
We should. All right.
Adding it to
Trademark.
notes right now.
Trademark that. We have slow burn questions. So the next one is sweatpants or dress up.
Ooh. Um, Maybe neither. I'm always living in places that it's like it's pretty hot. So sweatpants would be too hot, but okay, but like I would rather dress down than dress up
Dress
for
up.
sure.
I guess that's what I should have said. There should have been an in between there.
Just like
And it's-
scrub clothes, scrubbing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But although I am wearing this, like, well, I haven't been to Target in 2.5 years. And so
God.
I went to Target, and then of course I'm like, I want that, and I want that, and I want that. And so I'm wearing one of their just like cotton flowy dresses, which this still
Cute.
feels dressed down to me because it's
But
just
Yeah.
so
like it's almost a
comfy.
nightgown, you know? It's like a
Geeg and I
nightgown,
wear a
and
lot of muumuus, so
yeah, that's what
we
this feels
very
like.
much like she'll be like, "What should I wear?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna wear a muumuu, but I'm gonna add a hoop earring so it's fancy."
Exactly.
We do
That should
it.
be the category.
We haven't, I feel like we started wearing them when we were pregnant and breastfeeding, and we
Never
just never
stopped.
grew out of it. Like we were just like, no, 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 we'll dress it up. It's fine.
I dress it up, put a wedge on, it's fine. That's pretty
Exactly.
much where we're at. All right, the next one is what is your ideal date night?
Ooh, that's a good question. Probably someplace with like really, really good food, but not like super fancy. And walking outside, I love people watching. So my husband and I will like eat dinner and then we'll just walk around like where the harbor is and just people watch, and where we could just talk without kids. Any
Right?
place we could talk
Right?
without kids.
Anywhere
Yeah,
where I
that's
can
hard
go
to
where I
do.
don't have children around me is ideal.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah,
doesn't
You can
happen very
be,
often. Yes.
you can be, have adult conversation without somebody interrupting.
exactly. But
Yes,
I
I'm like,
love a good breakfast date too, like a brunch date with
same.
my husband. I really like that too. And we could just sit where we're out someplace on the water and we're watching the boats, like the cruise ships go by and all the tourists that are coming into the
Ooh.
beach. And it's just, yeah, nice outside and on the water and breakfast food, delicious.
Where we live, our water views are not great. So,
If we go to the city, they're wonderful. I think.
Okay.
then it's fine. It's like dirty water,
I
but
mean, I'm not gonna go swimming in it.
oh, definitely not. Oh, you'll definitely get a disease if you swim in one of our rivers in the city. But the picture in my head of you sitting next to water somewhere in Greece is very different than the breakfast dates that we go on here. Actually, my husband and I, we go to breakfast on the first day of school every year. We drop kids off and then we have a breakfast date. And our breakfast spot is next to a highway. So it's very similar vibes.
But it's a really good breakfast spot. I love
It
that
is. It's a
place.
good breakfast spot, but yeah, it's next to just like a busy highway. So, all right.
Okay,
So the
sorry, that was
next
all.
question is, and now that we know a little bit more, you mentioned that your husband is in the military. I'm actually really interested in this and the answer to this question because I have family who, in the military too. It's how many countries have you been to, and I guess now how many have you lived in?
Okay. Actually, we just recently wrote this down. So I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I haven't. Can I swipe out of the app and come back again? Does
I
that
have no
work?
I don't
idea.
know. Try it, and
Should
if it doesn't
should
work,
we
you can just
try
pop back on. Might as well.
it?
Then we
Okay,
just
let's
pop
try it
back
because
on and piece it
I have the
together.
answer to that exact number to the question. Okay.
I would like to know.
Okay, we have been to okay, 3 continents, 10 countries, and 34 cities within like not in North America.
Oh my
Wow.
So
gosh,
yeah,
that's
10,
amazing.
10 countries, 3 continents. We went to Europe, Asia, well, North America counted because we went and visited while we were in Greece. We also went and traveled to North America too. But yeah,
That
10,
is
10 countries in Europe. How many cities did I say?
it's
Anyway,
like 36 or something. My
yeah.
I have family and they've like they've done the similar lists and it's basically very similar numbers. They were more in the US, but like some of my cousins were born in other countries and stuff, which I just find that so fascinating. It's such a lifestyle to really
Yeah.
commit to.
So we've lived in multiple places in North America, like Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, California, multiple places in Florida. And then uh, we've only lived in Greece, in Europe. And then we are moving to Hawaii next week.
And
So,
is are
which
all of those,
like,
which like is so sorry for you.
I know,
Yeah.
I know.
My family in the military, like, they get like somewhere in like
Minnesota.
Alabama. Yeah, they're like into like Alabama, or they like
I
I
do
do feel
remember
like,
visiting family in Minnesota, and that was my military family.
yeah,
oh
like
yeah. Well, we're Navy, so I feel like Navy does get better places because it's typically
on the water.
coastal.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. So I'm assuming then like all of these moves have been military related
hmm
for the most part, which like I mean, that's such a honorable thing like for your husband and for you to do too because I'm sure it's not easy. So thank you to you and your husband.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm getting tired.
I'm
I'm
sure
getting
that's
That's
tired.
okay.
fantastic.
This was the hardest move by far, going from Greece to Hawaii, which is literally halfway across the world. And that this has been the hardest for sure. So we've taken a couple weeks and we're visiting family and we don't just I've been living out of suitcase since April 15th and
Oh
it's
my gosh.
now, the first week of July. So I'm
Wow.
I'm
And
tired.
especially with
Yeah.
kids. Like it's one thing to just like have you, to take care of, but to have kids
Are
and all that.
Yeah,
are
and
God.
two
your kids
dogs.
little? Oh, and two dogs. Oh my
Yeah, two
heavens.
dogs. My kids are 13, 10, and 7. So
Okay.
I will say they are at a great age for travel where everybody can carry their own suitcase, their own
That's good.
backpack. They can entertain themselves. But they also have strong opinions about every single thing that we're doing.
Yeah.
Whereas when they were little, it was just like, just listen to mommy and daddy and follow along. And there were no questions. But now it's like, well, can we have a sleepover with this person? And I'm like, we're leaving tomorrow out of the country. Why didn't you ask me this sooner?
Yeah.
Or, wouldn't it make more sense if we did it this way? And I'm like, uh, I I love you. Your opinion matters to me, but also can you just be quiet so I can
Right. I think I make
just
that actual statement
Yeah.
pretty regularly. I'm like, I love you. Yes, your opinion matters to me, but also no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I told them too. I was like, listen, I'm gonna get pretty snippy. This is stressful. I'm making adult decisions. I taught them what the phrase adulting means, and I'm like,
Yeah.
there are times where you're just gonna have to sit down and be quiet, and I'm so appreciative of that. And I'm also really sorry. This is a hard time on all of us, but we can do hard things. We can get through it, and I promise I will take you to Target on the other side when we're done.
When we get to the end of the tunnel, there will be a target.
Exactly.
Um, I can't even fathom moving that much. Like I've lived in the same house since my kids were born and we talk about moving like somewhere, staying local and the idea of it is very much not something I want to do just because of there's a lot of stuff and kids and whew, good job. You're doing a
Yeah.
great
Thank
job.
you.
If
Seriously.
no
Yeah.
one's
You're
told you
doing great.
lately, you're doing a great
Thank
job.
you. Thanks.
um, so I guess the last one is of those countries, cities, all that. Do you have a favorite?
Oh, I don't know. I really loved, well, we went to Israel a couple years ago now, and that felt like such a privilege to be able to see it because now we obviously can't really go visit there.
Yeah.
And so that felt really special. And then I really, really liked Lake Lugano, which is kind of next to Lake Como. And so it's just not as busy and it's a lot more quiet. And it's right on the border of Italy and Switzerland. And that was gorgeous. But there's some really awesome places that we just visited on our island and that are super inexpensive to do while we're there. And that has been some of my favorite places to be, just doing nothing. The kids can't really go anywhere. It's so safe. So they're just like walking to get ice cream by themselves. And we're just hanging out on the beach. And that's my happy place, is being on the beach, which is basically why I wrote a book that takes place mostly on the water and in the beach in the setting, because that's what I know the best.
So that's really funny that you say that, because I was going to segue into, like talking about your traveling and things like that, and did living in Greece, and where your book for the plot takes a lot of place in is Greece. Like, did that hold a lot of inspiration for you? I mean, I feel like obviously it did.
Oh, for sure. I was actually writing a different book. I wrote 60,000 words, which, to put that into context, for the plot was 102,000 words, which is like at 400 pages, basically. And so 60,000 was quite a lot.
That's
Almost
a
And
the
lot of
book,
words.
almost the whole book.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was
That's a lot
almost a
of
whole
words.
book. And all of a sudden, I woke up one day and I was like, I have a different idea for a different book. And I went to a friend. She was like the first friend that I had in real life that also reads smut. And you know how that feels when you find someone in the wild
Yes.
and you're like, oh, you're not just like online anymore. Like I can see you in person and talk about books in person in real time.
You're real.
Yeah, and so she knew that I was writing this other book, and it was actually like a coming of age novel, and it was kind of teetering on that young adult, new adult, about like, when you get your heart broken for the first time in high school. And I really wanted to gear it towards that maybe 16 to 24, because I feel
Okay.
like nobody writes books for 16 to 24-year-olds. And they either have to go a little bit younger or they have to go a little bit older. And maybe I'll still write this book one day, but I was feeling really guilty about it. I'm like, this is my book, baby. I can't
Yeah.
abandon it after 60,000 words. And my friend was like, "You're not abandoning it. You're just putting it down for a nap."
Yeah.
And I was like, "That is
Putting it
so
down for a nap.
sweet."
I love that.
So it's still
Yeah.
napping.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you can't go back to it. You can always go
Exactly.
back to it.
So I had this idea and it just came pummeling out. And yeah, it was set on the island of Crete, which actually I didn't even know Crete existed before my husband called me on the phone. He was deployed and he was like, so they want me to move to Crete. And I was like, I
Oh my
don't know
gosh.
where that is.
Yeah.
And so
You're like,
it's
wait,
actually,
I need
it's
more details.
exactly. And it's Greece's southernmost island, and it's also the biggest island, if anybody's curious. But my ignorance in geography, I didn't even know where
I
or
wouldn't.
what it was. And so, yeah, the idea came to me, and I actually started this writing the story at the one bed, one night stand mark. And then I had
Okay.
to go back and rewrite the beginning, but I just could not stop writing once the story came to me. And yeah, on the island of Crete. And so if I had never moved there, then I would never have the story. And it
Yeah.
just feels so serendipitous, which obviously is a major theme in the book too.
So that's one of my favorite. Like, there's just something to me about destiny, fate, things that are kismet. I'm so drawn to, because I personally feel like the universe has its own way of making things happen.
I
And so
agree.
reading about that in books, that's just something that I'm very, very drawn to.
I love that.
So I loved diving into all of that, and let it be known I love a good time hop. Like, when I wasn't sure like where things were gonna go, and I don't want to give away too many spoilers to our listeners, but do you want to give a quick, just maybe like a quick synopsis, basically, of for the plot? Like, do you have any little thing that you could, before we dive in? I mean, if you guys, I hope that you've all read this because we're obsessed. But if you haven't,
Yeah, so I look at it as like one night stand turned second chance romance. And so and I feel like that doesn't usually happen with
no.
like, and so yeah, the two main characters, the female main character is Joey and the male is Cam, and they find themselves on stranded on the island. They don't know each other, and they have missed the ferry back to the cruise ship on the island of Crete, and they have to find their way back. And it's interesting how feedback I get from people who have been to Greece versus people who read this book and have not been to Greece. And some people will be like, can that really happen? Does it really happen? And then the people who have been to Greece are like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about because it's
Really?
very easy. It's very easy to miss the boat going
Yeah.
back, the ferry going back. Nobody waits for you. It might tell you that it's going to come at 1 o'clock, but it came at 12:30 and you missed it, or it just it's wild sometimes
My
on
anxiety
the
could not handle
island.
that. Wow.
Yeah, I know. That was a huge adjustment. So they miss this connecting ferry, and then they have to find accommodations, and so that's where like the inn, there's only one inn and it's raining and there's only one bed, and of course, and
Sucker
they
for that. I am a
yeah,
sucker for the one bed always.
me too. It's my absolute favorite trope, so I was like, I have to write it
Yes.
as my debut. I just have to. And so
You did
um
it well. You did it
You
so
did.
thank you.
well.
Thank you.
You did do it well.
It was so much fun. And so they find out, without giving any spoilers, they find out some like very shocking news on both of their ends, and which causes them to have this like connection. And the one bed fun stuff happens, and then they go their separate ways, and they think they're never going to see each other again until a year later. They end
I
up,
loved the time jump because I
oh,
almost like
good.
wasn't expecting it. I think like as I was like I got to that part and they went their separate ways and it was like a year later. I was like a year. I wasn't, I wasn't expecting the time jump, but it made perfect sense with their stories that they needed to have that time jump.
I feel like you don't get that until the epilogue most of the time.
Yes.
So I
Mm.
Yes.
loved that was so soon. Like then you're just like, oh shit. Like
Yes.
here
Yeah,
we
that was kind
are.
of what it was. I'm used to the epilogue having that, like, okay, 1 year later, 5 years later, which I'm a huge sucker for
Yeah,
that.
that too.
I love that in an epilogue, but I loved it in the book too because I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
we're a year later. Like, what's happening? It made me excited to keep reading.
Yes. Thanks for sharing that, by the way. I love hearing what readers are,
Yeah.
saying about it. Makes me so happy. But yeah, a year goes by and they find themselves back on the island, which sometimes when I'm describing this, people are like, really? Back on the island again? I'm like, no, but you have to read it. It makes
You have
sense
to read
for
it.
why
It
It
they
makes
would go
makes
back.
so much sense.
Yeah, and so like Joey wants to redo this trip because she felt like her trip got really ruined by it, and so she returns, and then Cam gets a job there, and so they are reconnecting on the island. They bump into each other, and Joey is kind of not interested in starting anything, but she's like, hey, we're on vacation, when in Greece, like let's just keep this to the island. And of course, Cam is total he falls first moment, and they realize they both are living in New York City because Joey has since moved to be closer to her cousin. And so they get to continue this relationship when they move back to New York. And, of course, there's resistance on her part, but he convinces her.
One of the things I really liked was how strongly Cam feels about like fate and stuff like that. Because I am very much a everything happens for a reason person, good
You
or
missed
bad. Did you
when
guys
you
already
walked
talk about
away.
this?
Yeah.
Damn, damn it. I really wanted to say this too.
Go for
Ah,
it. Go for it.
Yeah,
biscuits.
you're right. For all of you that didn't know,
We'll act surprised.
Mars's
We'll act
children.
surprised.
Yeah, Mars's children are like in and out, so she's also in and out. So there
My
was a
toddler
moment where
fell off the bed.
Oh,
there was a moment where she disappeared when we talked about that previously.
Damn
But you
it.
say it
Well,
anyway. What were you going to say, Mars?
this really important fact that no one has discussed yet is that I loved that. I loved the fate and
So
like
good.
this everything happens for a reason because I feel that way. I am very superstitious.
I'm not
I am
necessarily
super.
superstitious, but I do for sure feel like everything happens for a reason. I can see
Yes.
it in the way that we keep moving with the military multiple times. And I'm like, I will make a new friend where we are. And I'm like, oh my God, like I know that you've been here all along. Like I was
I
meant to
love
meet
that.
this person, but like I'm from Florida. Why would I meet you in Greece, And now we're best friends and
Yep.
like a soul sister, and that was meant to
That's
be.
That's us. Geeg and I have lived in the same small town together. Our kids are friends. We like her and my husband they graduated together. Like we've known each other for a very, very long time, but it hasn't been since the last year that we realized that like we are soulmates.
Yeah.
And
Which
same with Sugar.
Oh,
We are this trio that, you're in your 30s and it's hard to make friends at this age and everything because you're just either like with kids or at kid shit, or the
yeah.
PTA, stuff like that. It is hard to make friends and find people that you connect with and have the same values per se, or just like, the same things,
interests.
interests and stuff
Yeah,
like that. And then when you do, you're like, I cannot believe that I am this age and it took me this long to find you. But again, everything happens for a reason. I'm not the same person I was in my 20s, so maybe we wouldn't have been friends then. So yes,
absolutely.
I love that about
Yeah.
Cam. Not that you guys already talked about
Yeah.
it or
We didn't.
anything,
We never
but I,
did.
See,
I
I
I
absolutely
know what you're
loved
talking
that.
about.
That whole part of the story was really cool for me.
I,
oh,
one of my favorite parts was when she was like, as much as I enjoyed that, the last thing I need to bring home with me is a UTI after their
That's
wedding.
see, Katie, we had actually so we had started talking with Katie with you on Instagram, and that was something we discussed was that it makes us crazy in books whenever we're like, why does no one ever get a UTI? Like, there's no yeast infections.
Like,
Like,
we get that that's not sexy and people like it's fiction. People don't want those things to happen. But also, when it really happened, like when she said it, we were
it's
like,
real
yes.
life. We were so excited about this. And like, it's real. Like, you got to take a pee after. You just have to.
yeah.
Okay. It's just
I,
how it
uh,
works. And no one does.
I know. But isn't it wild? And we discussed this like in like texting back and forth too, of like, I will believe, not believe, but I will just like let it roll some like really wild out there stuff. Like all of like Haunting Adeline stuff, like the gun scene. I'm like, okay, cool.
Seems fine.
Just
I'll
rolling with
allow
it.
it.
But then as soon as someone's like, we went camping and she smelled like flowers. And I'm like, no.
She did not.
She smelled like sweat and
I'm
dirty
like,
lake water.
that is not believable. I don't
The
know. It's just like
truth.
that. There's like idiosyncrasies of stuff about it. I actually had a note to myself, and maybe this is my ADHD shining through, but a note to myself that was like, make sure the reader knows that Cam washed his hands after he came home from the airport before he touched the cookie dough and stuck it in her mouth. I'm like, I needed the reader to know that he washed his hands.
He
And we
didn't
love
just
you
come
for
home
that.
from seriously, I would not want. You know what's weird though? Is like when you're reading, I don't know if it's just me, but I think of those things. Like I
Oh
would have been like,
yeah.
boy, I sure hope he like cleaned up after the airport. That's gross. Like
Yeah, I
For
know.
sure.
I'm wondering, I'm starting to wonder if it's a like a neurotypical versus neurospicy thing. I'm saying this with like underlying ignorance and definitely like I don't know. But I am questioning that. I'm wondering because I've talked to other authors or other readers and they're like, "No, none of that bothers me." And then there are other people that
Ooh,
are like, "No, it absolutely bothers me." And I'm like,
absolutely.
yeah.
yeah, I can't ask what their diagnosis is, but like I'm curious. I'm like, should I start like a thesis on this or something? Because it fascinates me by what some people care about and other people
Yeah.
absolutely do not care about with these details, you know? And
That is
it's
really
just
interesting.
it's not like I made a huge deal out of him washing his hands, but Joey, I don't know if you remember, but Joey's like cleaning the bowls when she's making cookies. And so he like
Yeah.
goes and like washes the bowl for her.
Yeah.
And so he's washing his hands in that, but it's not like
Yeah.
he walked in and washed his hands and then he touched me.
Before he, yeah, you made it, the transition was smooth and flawless. So, and it was
Thanks.
noticed. We see you. I
Oh
love,
my gosh.
I just love some of like the references, like the Step Brothers reference. I like, do you, is that something that you've seen multiple times? I don't know why that like stuck with me. I just died at it. Like, are you saying Pan or Pam? Like, I
Oh,
was
I'm
like, what?
so glad you love that because, well, first of all, either you're gonna love or you're gonna hate pop culture reference in a book. I
Yep.
mean,
I agree.
And I absolutely love it. And I really don't care if anybody else doesn't love it. If someone's like,
Right?
there's so many pop culture references, that means if somebody saw that review, somebody else would be like, yes, that's the book that
Yep.
I want. And
Exactly.
so I wrote the book that I wanted to read. And I continue to read my book just for fun because I still love it all these months later. And it's not just months later, it's been like over a year because from the time I had
Yeah.
started it and went through the whole
You wrote
process.
it. Yeah.
And I'm still loving it. But I will say, when I write jokes in there and then I'm editing and I'm rereading, I'm like, is it still funny?
That's because you've read it so many times already, but I
Exactly.
appreciated it. Mostly when so just when we say Step Brothers, it's not the first time we've referenced Step Brothers on our podcast. Mars and I love a good Step Brothers romance, and we've had that
I do too.
conversation before, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we had talked to you about this. Yeah, we interviewed Nyla Kay. She's like, I believe it was in that episode. She's like, wait, you mean like John C. Riley and Will Ferrell style? We're like, oh my goodness. Like, no.
I don't want to see that one. I read that one.
No. Yeah, I'm gonna pass on that one for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do love a good pop culture reference, and I appreciated it in your book. So, and
Yeah.
I love hearing that you wrote the book that you would want to read. That's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, my husband and I say that all the time. Are you saying Pam or Pan? And then like, yeah, we say it all the time when we misunderstand each other,
We
instead of
make
like getting into a fight about it.
Yeah, me and my husband make Step Brothers references all the time over just random things in our life.
Yeah, and then
Um,
I threw in the Catalina wine mixer too because they
oh
go
yeah,
to Catalina Island at the end. My husband and I, when we lived in San Diego, we went to Catalina Island. We were like, this is a real place.
were you just like it's the fucking Catalina wine mixer?
Yeah,
I feel
exactly.
you can't not say that when you reference that. You just can't.
For sure.
When I was reading the book, there's a reference to Maestro, the book
Mm.
Maestro. And who's that by? That's
Mm-hmm.
by
Adendar.
Auden Dar. So is that a personal favorite of yours by chance? Because I have had one of my bookish friends tell me to read that for the longest time. And I started it and it was really emotional in the beginning and I stopped. Since we talked before, I'm a mood reader and I just couldn't jive with it. And now seeing it in your book, I wanted to ask that question because it's been in my TBR forever.
Listen, it's my favorite book of all time. I went total feral and unhinged on Instagram. So my Instagram was just like my personal like Instagram from 2010 when my first daughter was born. And it was just baby pictures, right?
Yeah.
And my kids and stuff like that. And I have since taken my kids off of everything except with maybe I post them like twice a year and I have their
Yeah.
permission first and it has to be like, very controlled, intentional setting. And so this is just my personal account. I really knew not a lot about Bookstagram, but I always wanted to be a writer since I was 7. So I was trying to make connections and get in there. And I just happened to see talking about what's meant to be and kismet and serendipity and everything. I just happened to click on somebody's story, and she was talking about how Maestro, she just read Maestro and she was so emotional and it was the best and blah, blah, blah. And I could have just like kept swiping, right? And I
Yeah.
just had this gut feeling that I needed to read that book. Like right then and there, I was like, I was just consumed with this feeling. I have to read this book right now. And so I immediately downloaded it. I started reading it. And the first time I started crying, I'm like, okay. And then I just like continued reading and I kept crying. And then I started documenting my crying on Instagram and tagging Auden in my crying pictures. And I'm not talking about like little tears. Like I was
Sobbing.
sobbing. I was like, somebody needs to put me back on medication. I cannot stop crying. And I, you just connect with the book, and it's
Yeah.
vibes, it's just right timing. like right time, right place
Yeah.
that this book falls into your lap. And that's what it was for me. And then Auden and I got to talking and we chat like a few times a week. And I asked her if I could mention her book in my book as Joey's
Favorite. Yeah.
favorite book. And she was like, yeah, absolutely. And like, I made sure that I like sent her the pages ahead of time to be like, do you approve? Is this okay? And she was like, yes, absolutely. And I just felt so special. And it was just like this full circle moment. And Auden's been so encouraging of me, of my own writing journey. And it's just so special to have that in there. So yeah, it's my favorite book of all time. And also my characters, I got to, kind of write myself in there. And it was just so special. So I understand the mood, like feeling of why you put it down. I do hope you eventually get back to it and you'll have to let me know, but
I
I
will.
get it.
Okay, that
I've never
that
read
makes
it
me.
either.
You haven't? That
No.
makes my feelings feel validated because this person was just like, seriously, you have to read it. You have to read it. And I'm not one, like I'm not a big like DNFer. I didn't get far in, but that's where I was though. The fact that I wasn't far in and I was already getting upset. I was like, I don't know if I can mentally handle this right now. But I will circle back. I will definitely circle back to that.
Yeah, but you have to, yeah, it has to be the right timing for
Yeah.
sure, too, because
Yeah.
it's a big book. It's got tons of emotions. I wanted to throw my Kindle multiple times. I was sobbing for days later.
So you had that book hangover. Yeah. That's
Yes.
hard when you have a book hangover.
Exactly. My husband's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "I don't ever want to feel like this ever
You're like,
again."
I am unwell. That's
But
what we
I
always say. We're
loved
like,
it so
yeah,
much.
yeah.
He's
And
like,
that's
"I don't get it."
It had such like a good book feeling, despite it feeling not good. Like you have that
Exactly.
book hangover, but you're like, it was worth it.
Exactly.
I had a book hangover with your book. I loved it because first
Aw.
off, no third act breakup. I don't care if that's a spoiler. Thank you. I'm like bowing down to you. Third act
We get
breakups
third
kill
act
me.
anxiety. Like we
Yes.
know it's coming. And I think it might have been for the plot where I finished it first, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And you were like texting me and you were like, I know
I'm like,
something's
oh.
like, what? And I was like, no, you're good. You're good. I was like, you can do it. Like, you can read it. Because, yeah, I get that third act anxiety where I'm like, I know it's coming. I have to like take a breather for a minute to get through it. So, yes, thank you for no
Oh,
third act
sure.
breakup.
I like, I'm sorry, I'm like fangirling, thinking about things again as I go through it. But I loved one of the quotes. Hold on, I wrote it down. Women should feel empowered in the bedroom, not ashamed, and life's too short to have terrible sex.
Mm,
Yes. Like,
mhm.
I feel like not everybody, I don't want to say like acknowledges that, but I feel like it's just ignored.
And it's like almost like a shame thing too sometimes where
Yeah.
it's like we shouldn't feel that way. But like why? Why
Right.
not?
Yeah, I know.
I love
Yeah,
that you brought that.
I wanted to paint the picture of Joey, even though she's young, it's just like it doesn't matter. I feel like
Yeah.
kids these days, but I feel with the information that our young people have, I mean, I'm an elder millennial, but like so they're, they are reading literature, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. They're listening to podcasts, they're seeing reels, TikTok videos, whatever it is, and they are seeing like, oh, okay, I can make choices for myself. I don't have to be with this partner who's not treating me so great. Like, I deserve more. I can choose what I want in this adventure of life.
Yeah.
And I feel like I mean, that wasn't represented maybe for us growing up.
No,
And
not
so
at
I wanted
all.
to represent
Mm-mm.
that for, people who are, I don't know, 10 years younger than me or whatever, that they can have that.
I loved that about Joey's character because I feel like, yeah, she was young, but she was also written so well, like mature for her age. And it didn't feel, what's the word I'm looking for? Not fake, but like it didn't feel like it wasn't right. You know what I mean? Like it felt right for who she was.
Right. I feel
Right.
like her story could be a very real story. Like
Yeah.
the things that, with her mom and everything like that is very real life. So I think
Yeah.
that, yeah, and
And
her
that's
being
what I
able to
the
say, this is what I want and do it was
and
very
like
cool.
that's I don't read my reviews anymore, but I did in the very, very beginning because as a new author, I'm like, I wanted to see if there was a recurring pattern or something of like everybody was saying this exact same thing about the book in it. And then that would make me look internally or, think about how I want to do the next book. But there was nothing like that. Mostly like the bad, putting up air quotes, the bad reviews are just like people's own preferences of certain things. And I'm like, well, you
Then
should
write your own
have
book.
you should have read the blurb because if you didn't like
Yeah,
one
that's
bed, you probably shouldn't have picked it up in the first
Right?
right.
place.
Right?
So like silly things like that. But yeah, no, the reviews were saying like that they loved that Joey's character was so believable and that just is so
Mhm.
heartwarming as an author to be like, what I had in my brain translated onto my laptop, translated onto then when the person is holding the physical book, and that is so validating.
I also with Cam, his story too, I thought, and you don't see it a lot with male main characters in books, I don't think. Normally, like the male main character has this like established badass career situation already worked out. Like he's already, even if he's not like, the billionaire setting, he has it. There's the sports romances where they're hockey players, they're
Mm.
football players, they have these established things. And Cam was set up to have that and was like, you know what? I don't think I want to do that. So for him to do that too was really cool to see in a male main character because you just don't see that very often of them being like, this isn't what I want. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll see you later.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes you read a book and it's like they have this like big moment and all is right again. And that's not real. You bend relationships as best you can, but it takes time. There's usually not one big thing that happens where you're like, oh, you know what? You're right. Like, it's
We
cool. We're
good.
good.
Right.
We're good. And
Exactly.
that's not real. So for Cam to have to like take those little steps to mend his relationship with his parents was very real. So I liked it.
Thank you.
We liked the book a
We
lot.
liked your book.
When I read your thank yous, you say you went from stay-at-home mom to work from home mom. And I know this is a huge transition because like I've done it. The balance is hard. Do you mind sharing like during all these transitions, being a mom, do you have any tips that you can share on that besides like lots of busy works for kids or like play dates? Like how did you, obviously with the moving and adjusting to different places, I mean, you've had a lot of, I don't want to say obstacles, but just like things that maybe aren't like a typical rhythm for things. Like how did you manage writing
Not
and family?
very well. It was,
Real life.
yeah, I'm still figuring it out. Uh, it probably would have been easier if we were living in America, but living in Greece where the internet is not always working. So, you know, I depended a lot on Netflix and Hulu
Yeah.
and Disney Plus and everything to kind of keep.
But if you didn't live in Greece, then we wouldn't have Joey and Cam
Exactly,
probably.
exactly.
Everything
So
happens for a
the
reason.
universe made it.
Yeah, it took care of me. And to remind you, my kids are, 13, 10, and 7. And so like I don't have toddlers anymore. So there's not this safety component of it too, where you're
Yeah.
just like, oh no,
Yeah.
my child could like fall down the stairs or they're gonna eat something they shouldn't eat. Exactly. Or fall out of their
Yep.
bed at nap time. And like so I didn't have to worry about those certain things. So, I'm already starting in a different playing field than other people. But there was just, yeah, a lot of you just go and sit and watch the show for like hours while I can write. And it's really hard being a creative because it's not this 8 to 4 job where you're like, okay, I will write during these exact hours. Like you could try your best. And I started off trying to do that. But my inspiration would very inconveniently strike at dinner time. And
Sure it did. Honey,
well,
order another pizza.
And so,
Totally kidding.
yeah, but like when it would start like a little bit before they would get home from school. And so the bus would bring them home. And I'm like in the middle of writing, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to be interrupted to have to like take care of you kids stuff, so I try and have like
Right? Yeah.
snack ready for them, but they're also old enough to get their own snack too. And it was just like I would, go down and I would greet them, but they just immediately get into snacks, kind of watch TV. This was like the thick of it, right? And
Yeah.
I would just keep writing, and it was actually a pretty big problem where I just couldn't stop. And this is probably the ADHD where it's just like I'm hyper fixated and like in tunnel vision
Yeah.
mode and can't stop. And then I'm like, oh my God, I have to feed my family, or my husband's kind of getting
Yeah.
home kind of around the same
Right, because I'm sure
time.
his schedule's all over the place too, so
Yes. And
it's
there's no convenience type of food. Like there's no Costco where I could just go and get ready-made meals and have them on hand. Our refrigerator's really tiny. We're constantly having to go get food. And so that was really, 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 really hard.
Yeah.
And then to kind of break that, kind of put Joey and Cam aside. And now I'm doing it again, with the second book, but put them aside, kind of be with my family during this dinner time. My husband, bless his heart, was just such a giver during this time. And his work was, he was able, sometimes he'd be on call and he's like, sorry, like I got to go take this
Yeah.
emergency call. I'd have to leave. He'd have to go to the hospital. And I'm like, no, that's not convenient for me. That doesn't work out for me. And then, but he would help however he could, cooking a lot. And I don't really like to cook in the first place. And then the kids would go to bed, and I would just want to keep writing, but I felt like I needed to spend time with my husband also, or because my son went to an international school and he was speaking Greek most of the day in his class. Like I've had to supplement with English at home. So I'm teaching him to read in English, like right before he goes to bed, because he's actually can read and write better in Greek than he can in English at 7. And I'm like, oh, we're going back
that's
to the
wild.
States. I got to teach you how to read English. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it was really, really hard.
What a cool thing for him though, like, I think
Yeah.
that being bilingual is such, like, an important skill, and I am not.
Yeah,
And
me
any
neither.
like, I think that that is very cool that, like, your kids have that like, that's really cool. I'm sure that on them right now, they're probably like, "Oh, I have to move again. Oh, I have to make new friends." But at the same time, like, I hope that someday they look back and they're like, "You know what? It's really fucking cool though that I can speak Greek."
Yes, yes. I hope so. We'll see.
Yeah. Being creative is a really, really hard. I mean, it's just fucking hard to
Hmm.
balance being a spouse. Like Shug and I both run our own businesses, and we talk about this all the time, that it's like a balance between finding time to do it when it's not a 9 to 5, being a mom, managing a household, being a spouse.
Right.
Like you wear so many different hats. And so I was curious about that. I always wonder about authors' writing processes because of that same thing. It's like when inspiration strikes, you can't turn it on and off.
Yeah.
It's not, necessarily something that just, oh, I'll get to that
And
later.
it was,
I feel like I'm sorry.
oh, that's
I
okay.
just every author we've talked to has said the same thing too. They're
Right. I
like,
was just
it comes
about to
at such an
say,
inconvenient time. They're
yeah.
like, it's the middle of the night. And I am
Dude,
very much
Nyla was like, "Oh, I'm pretty much like she was like
a
I know.
nocturnal."
nocturnal,
I was gonna say when I
which
listened to her episode, it was so validating, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, rewinding it and telling my husband, I was like, "Listen, it's not just me.
I'm not
Yeah,
alone.
like don't think I'm
yeah,
crazy when I'm telling you that like
Mm.
this feels so inconvenient to be creative at this exact time." I'm like, somebody else is, but it's
it's
hard when you
not
have
just
3 kids
me.
to add into that, where it's not just you being like, okay, sure, I could make this like a nighttime job and I can sleep during the day. Oh
Yeah.
no,
Right.
I have to still wake up and like take my kids to school.
I used
Right.
to
Like
do that. Like when I would work, I would do it until like 3 or 4 in the morning, and then it's like, okay, you can sleep in. Even when I only had like 1 or 2 kids, I could still sort of like function. but I have 4 kids and
Mm,
like between the ages of 8 and 1. So
yeah,
like it doesn't work. So yeah, but I mean sometimes once again, like when I have work I need to do, I'm like, I'm just gonna make a couple days where I'm super tired because I feel like that's the best time when I work.
I agree. Yeah, it's all just
I am
trial and
not a
error.
creative. I am not. And I always say I get like 2 or 3 inspiration of like a reel that I'm like, we should make this for for our Instagram. And I'm so proud of myself when it happens. But then I'm done.
I'm proud of you
That's
too.
about
Don't
that's
worry.
about all
I'm
I
proud.
can handle. So I like can't even imagine being in the situation where it's like you have all these ideas and thoughts where I'm like, Geeg, we should do this. And I tell her my plan for the most part, and then she executes it for me. Even earlier, I was like, we should do Christmas in July. Here are the books. I was like, this is what you should do for
I'm like,
this.
I got you covered.
And so I can't even, I'm very much a routine person. I don't think I would do well with that, if I'm being very
It's
honest. So I'm
hard.
glad
It's
that
hard. I like
you
routine
guys could do
too.
it.
It's like I feel like I'm working against myself because I thrive on routine and I really, really wanted to make this writing gig a 9 to 5 sort of thing, 8 to 4, whatever. And I'm like, okay, as soon as the kids go off to school, like I'm gonna sit down at my desk and this is gonna be it and blah blah blah. And then you're like staring at your computer and you're doing work-ish related stuff, but you're not. And my husband, in the very, very beginning, he'd come home and it was sort of like, so how much writing did you get done? And I was like, 300 words. And he's like, what did you do all day? And it was really kind of a point of like, a stressor in our marriage for a little bit where we just had to figure it out. I was still trying to learn myself and how this works
Yeah.
and meet other authors that they could say, me too, and then tell my husband, like, it's not just me. I'm not broken. Like, I felt really broken for a while because
Aw.
and he did not make me feel that way, but it was
Yeah, but
sort of, yeah.
Oh,
I feel like
internally,
we're
you do it to
harder. Yeah.
Oh,
yourself.
I'm so
You do it
Yeah,
to
we're
sorry.
harder
yourself
on
no matter
ourselves.
what.
Exactly. I have been doing therapy for 14 years and I move every 2 years with the military and so I have to find a new therapist every 2 years and
Oh my
every
gosh.
single
You need one
therapist.
that travels with
I
you.
know.
Like,
Ev-
just do a virtual.
exactly. Every therapist I've ever had, the theme is you're too hard on yourself and I'm like, I know. And so
I've been working on it for 14 years.
exactly. And I'm getting a
Yeah.
little better every couple of years. But no, being a writer and author really brought up a lot of stuff for me. And yeah, I couldn't make the 9 to 5 thing fit and work for me. And so I'm still just, and now that we've been living out of a suitcase since mid-April and I'm working on book 2, it's also trying to like, we're living in hotels. We're just like,
Yeah.
and
Gosh.
trying to figure out when and to write.
You're recording
Tell
the
us
podcast
about
in a
book
closet.
Yes.
2.
Yes, on vacation with my extended family, my in-laws, I'm recording a podcast in my nephew's closet at the lake house.
It's fine. You make it work and we appreciate you for
Yes,
that. And we
very much
appreciate
so.
that you stuck it out to write for the plot, figuring out how to manage all of that because we love it. And if you guys that are listening haven't read it yet, please do. Please
Please
read
read
it. You
it.
will love it.
It was like a feel-good book, even with the elements of it that were more like serious and stuff. Overall, your book made me feel good.
Oh,
Yeah.
Like
thank you.
I like finished it and I was like sad that it was over, but at the same time, like felt good about it.
Would you,
And at the same time was like, what's
What's
happening
next?
next? Is there something that you can
You've
share with
mentioned
us? Yeah.
so
twice
what
now.
did you guys think of when you thought the pegging scene was fade to black? What was your reaction
Oh
there?
my
Oh,
God.
yeah, damn
Oh,
it.
oh, I had this in my notes. Sorry. Yeah, before I didn't see a reel that you had posted about it. And I like messaged you and was like, listen,
You promised
It's like-
pegging.
I was like, I am unwell over this. Why did this not happen? And then whenever I got to the actual scene, I was like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, I did that as sort of like a
Oh,
choose your own spice adventure of, like
that's
level of
cool.
It was
spice,
cool.
because when I was working with my beta readers, well, first of all, I was like, I really want to write a pegging scene because I don't read it. I like
Yeah.
very often,
Right.
if at all. And I was like, I want to have this representation in there, and I think it would just be super fun to write, and I could do a good job at it. And
You did.
thank you.
You
So,
did.
so then but my betas were like, okay, but this might tip you over to like possibly erotica, or like just having a little bit more maybe trigger warning. Like they were being very
Yeah.
kind of devil's
Like
advocate about
cautious
it,
with
right?
it?
Like they were just giving me like,
Okay.
hey, just something for you to think about. Not saying it's bad, good or bad one way or the other, but like this could just put you over into like, in kind of a different category or whatever. And I was like, no, it's great advice. And I was like, I really don't want to lose readers halfway through the book or 2/3 of the way through the book because they read like a very explicit kind of kinky scene. And depending on what
You would not have lost us.
Yes,
depending
you
on
would have.
like what your
We
level
would.
is, right?
Yeah.
And someone could easily be like, ooh, this is way too much for me, and then like slam the book down. And so I had it fade to black in the beginning, but then I was like, it has to be in the book. Well, I had considered maybe having it be a bonus, like sign up for my newsletter bonus thing, but I was like, oh, how many people actually really sign up for bonus newsletters? I don't know.
Oh, I do.
Okay, it's great. I never do.
Well, sure do.
Secret, I
I
don't,
never do
because I
either.
don't like to clog up my emails, but
I don't either. But so that was what I loved about this though, because you don't see it like done like this though. It's typically done by get this extra
Mhm.
scene, get this extra sexy scene. And also too, a lot of the times when people do that, the book is still extra spicy. But
right.
with yours, like there was still spice, but it wasn't overwhelming. So actually, Mars, I feel like Shug could read this book
Oh,
and
she could.
enjoy
She's
it.
fine.
I mean, not like could read it. Like so if you've listened to, some of the episodes,
She just doesn't
we
commit like we do.
yeah, we're very, very committed.
You're slowly
To
just working, you're working her in. You're working her in.
exactly. But yeah,
And Shug, we
so
love you just the way you are. Don't change.
yeah,
But also read the book.
I think one episode we recorded without her, she listened to like my final edit of it and she was like, "Guys, the episode sounds really great, but also you didn't mention that you missed me enough."
Oh.
She's like, "Just letting you know, so we miss you, Shug,
We
and we
miss
think you should read this book because yeah, she may choose not to read that pegging scene and you give them the option without
Exactly.
having to sign up
And
for
it
an
and it
email."
makes no difference in like the plot overall. And
right.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and so then it's there at the end is the spicy bonus scene, and everyone wins. You get to read it or you don't get to read it, and
It was a win-win.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's just
She
right
was
there. You could like reread it at the end. You don't have to like go
Yeah.
search for it again. It's just
You're
conveniently
like, "I need this
located.
real quick."
Just rewind to go back. Rewind, go back.
But if you're wondering if you should read it or not, you should read it.
You
Yeah,
should read
it's
it.
good.
So good.
All
All
right,
right, Mars.
so we're gonna get ready to wrap up, but before we do, can you share what you're writing now?
Sure.
Anything about it?
Yeah, so it is Millie's story.
Yeah.
And
I was hoping you were gonna say that.
Me too. I
yes,
was like,
it's Millie, and oh my God, I'm having so much fun writing her. We meet her in For the Plot as Joey's cousin, and there's a, quick mention of her with Ezra, and like, did they not gonna hook up in
Ooh.
the, like, they're found together in bed in Greece, and after some very like heated karaoke, they're very competitive.
I loved
um
that scene.
me too.
yeah, it was so much fun. And Millie is bi, and there is a twist in the beginning of the book. It
Ooh.
actually takes place at the end of For the Plot. The epilogue, it takes place that exact same day. it just picks right up, but from Millie's perspective.
Ooh.
And so some things have happened during that last scene that you don't get to see in For the Plot. And then you see other, like a little surprise kind of twist. And yeah, it is actually the main trope is fake marriage. And it's,
Ooh.
yeah, fake marriage. Writing this bi character has been so healing because I only came out as bi just this last year, like publicly. And
Yeah.
so writing her is so healing and just so much fun. And there's also like, there's a lot of kind of body image stuff. She is coming off of a tour, kind of doing like a traveling Broadway tour. And she has like a really bad experience actually, and she's really burned out, and she gains a bunch of weight, and she's like struggling like to be in her new body as this full figured curvy woman because she's used to just being like this New York City Pilates toned, like always having to be perfect. And so she's struggling with that. And, you know, maybe her new love interest helps her love her new body. And
I love that.
since I'm moving to Hawaii, actually, most of the book takes place in Hawaii. So we have another like tropical island setting. And
Love.
I feel like that just is kind of fell into place where I get to write about Hawaii while living in Hawaii, and so I'm excited for that.
That's cool. Now, am I allowed to ask, or will it be a spoiler? Is it gonna be FFM?
It is not, although it
Okay.
almost was, and I kind of tried to start writing it out that way, and I was like, it's just not, the characters told me that's just not what they wanted.
That's okay. I was just
I
curious
know.
because some of the things that happened in For the Plot, I was like, I don't know which way this is gonna go. But
Yes.
I love for you getting to write, like that's awesome and probably inspirational for others coming out later in life.
Yeah,
So I love that.
absolutely.
Like that
And
you can.
yeah, rest assured that I will definitely write FMF or MFF or some combination of those letters. It is definitely like plotted and kind of
It's
planned, and like
on your
yeah, it's on
radar.
there. But I'm going to finish this All for Love series first.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think I can like jump around. Although
Yeah.
there might be a holiday novella. Not, I don't think it'll be in time for this. In time for
If
this.
people could see if people could see Mars' face on this, she's on mute because there's a toddler on her lap and she's talking and I don't think she knows she's on mute. She's very excited.
I thought I unmuted it. I love a holiday novella. That just like I just got so excited.
I know.
Yeah, I can't
This
wait.
is real life
Yeah,
over here.
I
Is there a timeline for the next book? Like, do you have a date that you have to
yeah, so
that you're
I do
hoping
have
to
a
have it published by?
deadline with I have a deadline with my editor. It's gonna look like it's gonna be early March, which feels like a long way away, but I'm doing Romance in the Desert in Phoenix, Arizona, March
Oh,
15th. And I would
fun.
really love to have the book, you know, kind of right before that. And so the excitement of it, and then go straight into Romance in the Desert, and people can, you know, read it for the first time while they're there.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
yeah, maybe one day I will be able to write more than one book a year. But obviously, this is just my second book and I'm just starting out. But
We'll take what we can
yeah,
get.
I am so detail oriented, and also I'm moving halfway across the world, that
Yeah.
like I have to
Give
remind
yourself
myself. Yeah,
grace.
I have to remind
Yeah.
myself of that when I'm like, why are other authors putting out more books than I am? And it's like, okay, they're also not moving halfway across the world at the same time. So
Yeah. And that's
And
okay. You do
exactly.
like
yes.
that's
That's one of the things we talked about with Emily Rath too, is she said the same thing about like some
Oh,
authors
fast
producing
fiction.
so
Yes,
many
I heard
books.
it.
Yes. And me, I'll wait. I would
Yeah.
rather wait. Like, yeah, I do. I am definitely one of those people who I will read, a bunch of those books. But the ones that I love the most, I'll wait. I will wait. I don't
Yeah, don't
care how long
worry.
it takes. We're
We are
here. We're not
here.
going anywhere.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that means a lot for sure.
Wow.
Thanks for being here with
Yeah, this
us.
this
This
Yeah,
was
was
really
great.
this was
fun.
so much
Well,
fun.
thank you for they're playing Legos now. That's what you just heard.
They just dumped
they
them.
they did. But so thank you for co-op.
Oh,
I don't know what the word I'm looking for. It's not cooperating. Thank you for
thank you
being
for joining us. Yeah.
understanding
Yes,
our
absolutely.
real lives over here, as you have your own anyway. You get it. This is real life. We do our best every day, and that's what it is. We can do
Exactly.
hard things. You
Yes.
said that, and Geeg, her family says that all the time, and I
Yeah,
have
that's our
taken it
life
under my
motto.
wing
Hmm.
too.
Same. Yeah,
Is that we can do
there's
hard things.
actually there's a quote, that exact quote is in book 2. And
I
yeah.
love it. I'm so
Yeah.
excited.
So if you need any like ARC readers or anything, we always got you,
I
boo.
know we're
Absolutely.
here.
Consider yourself on the list.
Yes.
Yay!
So your social, you are what is your Instagram handle? So if anybody's looking
Yes,
to
it's
find you, I mean, we'll tag you,
sure.
but
It's at Katie Van Brunt author, and that's both Instagram and TikTok, which I mean, I'm most active on Instagram, especially with my DMs. And TikTok, it's just mainly like, I don't know, just posting stuff out there and seeing what lands. I know you guys
Right,
have talked about it before too. It's just like, I
right.
don't
We
know what to
can't
do over
hang.
there, but I'm just gonna have some sort of footprint.
Yeah, Mars does a good job at that. She runs our Facebook and our Instagram and our well, I mean we all kind of run the Instagram, but yeah.
Yeah,
She runs the Facebook and the TikTok and she does a great job.
she
She's
does.
muted cuz kids are dumping Legos.
I
But I
tried.
see you, Mars.
I tried doing Facebook, and I don't know. It just Instagram is definitely where I'm the most active. Yeah, I
But
gotta.
yeah, everybody follow Katie. She's amazing and
Thank
read For the
you.
Plot. You will not regret it. I feel like it's a good summer read. So
I
we put it on our
it
Yes.
is.
summer reading list.
Thank you. Yeah, I
We
hope
did.
that it'll get some traction, especially with the summer. So it's
Well,
exciting.
Yeah,
Thank you
awesome.
guys for all your support.
thank you, Katie. This was really fun. Thank you for hanging out in the closet
Yeah,
for an hour and 15 minutes.
anytime.
And now you can go have fun with your family.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye.